What if the darkest moments of your life became the foundation of your greatest triumph? Today, we dive into a story of unimaginable loss, undenying faith, and the power of forgiveness. Stay with us as we uncover how one woman rose from the ashes to find hope, healing, and a renewed purpose. I'm Natty.
I'm Veda, and
we
we're
are
here to thrive. Welcome back to another episode of Thrive by the Rising Muse, the podcast where we explore stories of faith, family, and mental health. Today we have an extraordinary guest with us, Miss Shelly Edwards Jorgensen, and she is the author of a powerful memoir called Beautiful Ashes, where she shares her journey through unspeakable tragedy, deep-seated trauma, and the miraculous ways faith has carried her through. Shelley's story is one of resilience, courage, and the transformative power of forgiveness and love. Shelley's memoir takes us through the heartbreaking experience of losing her mother, the trauma of abuse, and how she found her way to healing and faith. We're honored to have her here with us today to share more about her journey and the lessons that she's learned along the way. Shelley, welcome to Thrive by the Rising Muse.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm blessed to be here, and I'm just grateful that we get to have this conversation and help. And my goal in life at this point is to do all I can to help others find hope in their journey through life and healing, and by sharing mine. And so, thank you for having me on.
We are honored.
Our pleasure.
What inspired you to write Beautiful Ashes and to share such a deeply personal experience with the world?
Well, that's not a simple question to answer, because unless you know a little bit of my story. So I'm a person of faith, like you mentioned, which that's what saved my life. But it took a lot of effort to fully trust in God's plan for me, because I grew up in domestic violence, and when I was 15, my father, who was an abusive alcoholic, ended up murdering my mother and burning her house down. And so subsequently, I've had many experiences where what I would call the veil between mortality and immortality has been thin for me. And I've had experiences with my mother. And so my mother actually wanted me to write this book. God wanted me to write this book. Shelley did not want to write the book. Shelley is an engineer with dyslexia who writes in bullet points. So I joined up with I joined up with a friend who helped me with the writing, and subsequently we've gotten awards for the writing and the story, but so the story is 100% mine. I wrote it, and then she made it readable. So
she put the words in the right places so right, we can understand.
Yeah. So it was a very laborious process. It took 9 years for various reasons. I mean, probably the last 4 were the really intense ones, because she had baby number 5 right when we started, and then they moved to Thailand for 3 years. And so, but because I would give her details, then she would, arrange the words, send them back to me, and I'd be like, well, that doesn't sound like me, or that's, and fix everything and go back and forth that way to make sure the details were right.
Yes, yes, of course.
It's a testament that God uses whoever he wants for his glory.
He does. He does. Miss Shelley, you're healing from trauma and abuse. I know it was difficult. I know it was an ongoing process, because I'm definitely a survivor and delivered from that, but it's still an ongoing process. And
Mm-hmm.
so I do understand this, but can you walk us through how you began this journey and where the specific steps and moments that were crucial in your recovery?
Yes. So because I had very big trauma. I mean, I grew up in domestic violence, so I witnessed all of that and everything that comes along with it. And then being a victim or a child that grows up in domestic violence sets you up to become a victim in other ways. So the same year actually that my mom was murdered, I was raped 2 different times as well. And I also have molestation in my background. So I had all of that too. And then I lost my home and all my possessions. My dad ends up in prison after 2.5 years of living with him. There's just trauma after trauma after trauma. I mean, it just continued and continued. I say after my mom was murdered, things got worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but there was lots of grace in there. I had visitations from my mom and encouragement like right after. And so I think the first kind of setting the stage to even give me the ability to hang on was the fact that my mom was very involved in my life. She never missed anything that my sister or I ever were involved in. And so the first basketball game that I had, because it was basketball season and I played, I was actually at basketball practice when this whole thing transpired. And I'm playing my first game, and this is going to be the first game in my life. I'd been playing organized sports since I was 6 years old that my mother was going to miss. And so right before halftime, it was on a breakaway. I steal the ball, and I'm way ahead of everyone because I'm on a breakaway. I'm getting ready to do my infamous finger roll layup, and I hear cheering in the stands, and it's my mother's voice. And I look up in the stands and I see her, and then I feel her. I brick the shot because naturally I'm not paying attention to where the basket is. I've totally lost where I was spatially. And as the ball's bouncing away, and I feel my mother's presence, her voice, Shelley, I love you, and everything will be okay. Oh, what? That couldn't have happened. I'm 15 years old. The buzzer rings. I go into halftime. My coach is probably thinking, how the heck did she miss that? And I'm sitting in the locker room, not, everything else must have been, it sounded like Charlie Brown, wah, 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 wah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, am I losing my mind? Did that really happen? Am I losing my mind? So that was in October, the end of October. Then it's Christmas time. I'm at the mall, which is one of the biggest malls in the area. Very, very, very busy. It was between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So we all know in the 80s that there was no Amazon. Everyone was at the mall.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm walking past Baker Shoes. If you guys remember Baker's.
I remember Baker's shoes. Oh my God, yes.
So my mom loved shoes and handbags, and Baker's always had sales. And so my mom was a depression baby, so she was into bargains. And so I'm going past Baker Shoes because that was my mom's favorite store, and I look in there. I swear she's in there. I'm like, oh. So I have to run around this bench. Okay, now we're height of Christmas shopping at one of the busiest malls in the suburbs of Detroit. And I go in the Baker's, not a soul in the place because even the workers were in the back room. So I'm like, oh, Shelley, you're crazy. Hopefully no one saw you practically jump that planter to get in there. And so as I'm walking out, again, the sensation washes over me, my mother's presence. I feel her. I hear her, Shelley, I love you and everything will be okay. Okay. That's twice. Still, you're not telling anybody, Shelley. They're going to institutionalize you if you tell anyone that you're having these experiences. I'm 15 years old. I didn't know this was even possible. So by this point, my dad had moved us in to my best friend growing up's house that was like kitty corner behind our house up on a hill, because my friend Linda had moved to another house in the neighborhood like 2 years ahead, and the people that had bought their house were on a foreign work assignment, so they were renting it. So we were renting, and now I can look out my bedroom window at my house that's boarded up and burned up. And I'm having reoccurring nightmares at this point. My dad started sending me in November to the house in the dark with the keys to basically a haunted house, which is where my mother was murdered, to get canned goods. So now I'm like, so like I said, when I say things got worse, they got worse. And so now I'm having these reoccurring nightmares. I'm in the depths of hell. I I wasn't sleeping. It was terrible. So I'm laying on my side one night, just miserable. And all of a sudden my room started getting light, and I thought, well, maybe Lisa or my dad opened the door and the light's coming in from the hallway. No, I rolled over and my room is filled with light because there's my mother standing there, and all she says to me is, Shelley, I love you and everything will be okay. Gone. Now, this is before the second rape of that year. This is before, um, you know, I'm having to save well, maybe not before was starting to have to save myself from my sister from being killed. This was before I had to be the star witness at the prosecution for my dad's murder trial and go home with him. This is before people were stealing everything that was left. This was before. But the message was 3 times, everything's going to be okay. Well, it wasn't okay. It wasn't okay. For 20 years, it wasn't okay. I was surviving. And on paper, I looked like I was thriving because I end up being an orphan. But I end up going to college. I end up homeless, but I end up owning a home. I end up having my dream job as in the auto industry. I had my undergrad in engineering, and I'm working for Ford. I'm promoted into management pretty quickly in my career because of the things that I was doing. And I go back to school. I get my MBA. I graduate summa cum laude. And on paper, I'm making big money. I have a home. I have it all together, but I'm praying to die every day. I had done talk therapy on and off since college as I could afford it. Still praying to die every day. And I always, and so finally I found a therapist that did other healing methods for trauma. And so one thing I do tell people is that, therapy is not one size fits all. And so you have to keep looking till you find what works for you. I did EMDR when no one even knew what EMDR was. But NET is what saved my life, which is neuro-emotional technique. And people still don't even know what that is. Cranial sacral work, neurofeedback. I've done it all. They all help, and every modality is different for different people. So you have to keep looking for what works. But so now I'm 35 years old, and I start down this journey of new trauma therapy, and I read this book called Believing Christ. And in this book, the author talks about how most of us believe Christ, believe that he exists. Okay. Christians generally, we're Christian because we believe that Christ is real,
Right.
but we fail to believe him. Believe that what he promises you, and that's the other thing, is the misunderstanding of what the atonement is. It's really one-sided to only see the atonement as a mechanism for forgiveness of our sins and shortcomings. But that is what he paid for on the cross. What he paid for in the Gethsemane, from bleeding from every pore, was our healing. That is what he paid there. He suffered all so that he could know and empathize and walk that path with us. And through his atoning sacrifice, we can become healed. And the scriptures, there's a scripture about yoking yourself with Christ, that his burden is light. Well, that's what he's saying. He's saying, if you trust me and you believe me, if you believe that I can do what I promised you I can do, then it will be done. But you have to believe that. And then you have to learn how to trust in that belief. And so the turning point was, for me, learning how to trust in God's plan for me, not for the world. That I can trust in the plan for the world. I had to trust in God's plan for me. And, I've been victimized by how many men? So how am I going to fully trust? And so you can't do it 99.9%. It has to be 100% trust. And the only thing that we have to give to him that he hasn't given us, which he actually did give us anyway, is our will. Our talents, our gifts, our ability to be educated, with the intellect or the social standing or where we're born in the world or whatever, that's a gift. Everything we have is a gift. And the only thing, his whole plan revolves around free agency and our ability to have free choices. So the only thing that we have the power to give him is our will. So, and that requires trust in his plan. And that also requires that I guess let me back up. So, like, for me, one thing, when I was still in the depths of despair, there's a scripture. I converted from Catholicism to Mormonism. And so in the Book of Mormon, which is just another testament of Jesus Christ, there's lots of things that people don't understand, but I'm not trying to convince or sell or anything. What I want, but there's a scripture in the Book of Mormon that talks about there must needs be opposition in all things. And I'm an engineer. There's also laws of physics that say equal and opposite forces, right? And the scriptures also teach us that there is justice and mercy. So God is perfectly just and he's perfectly merciful. So again, my logical brain, I'm like, okay, well, if justice, I can trust in justice. So I start looking at the scales. I'm trying to get in the camera. So if this hand gets full of pain and suffering and sorrow, that means there's an imbalance. That's not justice. So if I can at least trust in justice, if nothing else, that at some point justice is going to be served, that means that this side has to be filled at some point with an equal and opposite amount of peace, joy, happiness to offset the pain. And so I held on to that principle for a very long time. Is just, okay, I can trust in justice. I just need to let go of when I think that justice should be delivered. I do not get to dictate the timing in which that justice is served. And so it's not my responsibility to command God to deliver justice today. Because the other thing, and this is probably the most important thing, even beyond trusting in the plan, is knowing why the plan knowing like the fundamentals of the purpose of life.
Mhm.
It's to learn and to grow. But to learn and to grow in what? To develop Christ-like characteristics. So, how does a loving Father in heaven teach us humility, teach us endurance, compassion, strength, long suffering, empathy, etc.? And that is the plan. It's just we have to work to get it. And
Yes.
so, and the other thing is I think it's a natural thing for people to feel like, oh, well, I have it so much harder than so and so. No, it's you're
Journeys, an individual.
yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are parents. Do you love any of your children? Did you say, oh, well, I love this one more? No, God doesn't do that either. So if he loves us all the same and we're all required to be learning these same lessons, the only different is the path in which we get there. So
Yes.
if I get to my breaking point by having my mother murdered and raped multiple times in the same year, and somebody else gets to the same breaking point by maybe they don't know what clothes to wear to the ball. I'm just making something trivial to make a point. It doesn't matter. They got to the breaking point. Now you're at the breaking point. Are you turning towards him or away? Are you developing the characteristics that you're supposed to be learning or are you not?
Right.
And and so, I the other thing that I tell everybody that I learned was that it's we're naturally weak, but that's so we're teachable and we can be humble. And part of developing characteristics of Christ is overcoming the natural man, overcoming the flesh, and overcoming temptations. I mean, why was the devil tempting him with all those things that he was tempting him with? Because they wanted to see if he would succumb to being human.
Hmm.
and and so that's another part of the journey, and so it's a natural question to say, why me, why is this happening?
Hmm.
It's fine to say that and to think to have that be your first thought when something bad happens. You just can't stay there. I learned is staying I stayed there for 20 years. Basically I kept going, and on paper I kept going, but mentally I'm full of depression and misery because I couldn't understand why. I didn't put two and two together that why is the question that leads to depression and misery. The answer to why 100% of the time is because I need to be learning something. So if I waste my energy feeling sorry for myself by asking why me, and then I can be stuck in misery. That's a choice. Or you can start asking the question, what and how. What am I supposed to be learning, and how do I use that to help myself and others?
Yes.
You have to go outside yourself. It has to always be beyond yourself because we are here together to help each other. Life
Yes.
is a team sport, and none of us succeed unless all of us succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And you said the adversary, to me, all he wants to do is divide. He wants us to compete with each other as if there's not an infinite amount of love and acceptance to go around by God.
Right.
Like there's some finite piece of pie, which is a falsehood.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I answered the question. I just went rambling.
No, you did.
You answered that question, a couple more questions, and we're going to okay, she answered that, she answered that.
If you allow me to go a little bit in detail into your story and share as much or as little as you want.
I'm an open book. You can.
Okay. And the reason, particularly for me, when I was in undergrad, my specialty was child abuse, and I did that probably on purpose out of my own child abuse. It is something that I'm passionate about. And I also know that we have especially locally, some law enforcement audience, and there's certain things that from your story that have really kind of like nagged at me that I'm trying to figure out how this happened. So when the events of your mom happened,
Of my grandmother's car for this week. And she was a senior. And there was the first 2 hours of the day for her was at this advanced office procedures class that was taking place at a different high school in our city.
Okay.
And so normally she would take the bus to that school and then the bus back. And there was a whole group of kids that went.
Right.
And so, but my sister drove because she had my grandmother's car.
Right.
Well, on the way back, her and the two girls that were in her class with her stopped. In Michigan, you call them party stores, but kind of like a no-name 7-Eleven, right?
Yeah.
And so, well, they're seniors, they're dumb, and they decided they were going to shoplift beer. So they all got arrested. Well, my dad, he was a designer for Ford, and this is the 80s, and so CAD systems were new, and they ran them 24 hours a day because they didn't have that many because they were so expensive. And so my dad was on afternoon shift at this point and had been for a couple years. So my mom was at work, and my dad was the one that had to pick my sister up. Now, mind you, my dad is the one who becomes violent when he drinks.
Right.
But so my dad picks up my sister. I'm hearing through the grapevine that this is happening at school because I don't even know how, but I'm hearing through the grapevine. And again, because I'm a trained expert in recognizing warning signs, I'm like, oh no. Okay, I don't know what's going on. Blah blah. Well, I was on the junior varsity team and my sister was on the varsity team. Lisa came back to school in the afternoon and she went to her varsity basketball practice right after school. I rode the bus home because my practice was after hers. And so, but I never talked to my sister because I never saw her. So I get home, and at that time, my dad should have been just getting ready to leave for work. I arrive. My dad's in the kitchen in his bathrobe, drinking Manhattans, in cooking meatloaf, which isn't odd, the cooking meatloaf part, but the fact that now he's drunk and he's not going to work.
Mhm.
And then he starts telling me what happened and he starts crying. Where did I go wrong as a parent? Whoa, wait a minute. Now, I have 500 things I could tell you, but I know not to say anything.
Anything, right.
And I've never seen this emotion of you crying in this setting. So I hide myself upstairs. I go upstairs to avoid my father.
Mhm.
Well, again, part of the normal routine is to make contact with my mother to confirm all the carpooling stuff.
Right.
So my mom asked if my dad had left for work, and I
Mhm.
said no. Mistake. So she says, "Oh, well, let me talk to your dad." Okay. So this is again the 80s. I'm on the wired handset. I'm in my parents' master bedroom. So I call downstairs to my dad's still in the kitchen in his bathrobe, still drinking Manhattans. And I tell him that mom's on the phone. And when he picks up the handset, I hang up. I should have freaking just listened. But I ran downstairs and I sat outside to eavesdrop on at least his half of the conversation. So I hear my dad, because now finally I'm hearing what the story is, because I don't even know.
Mhm.
And all I knew is that Lisa was arrested because he did tell me that. And that's when it was, where did I go wrong? And so I hear my dad telling my mom what happened. Well, you guys are mothers. How pissed off would you be if your 17-year-old is getting arrested for shoplifting?
Mhm.
You're
'Cause
going to be mad.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I mean, there's shot, and Lisa wasn't and at this point, I didn't even know Lisa. She was just with them. She wasn't even the one. They got it caught with it in their purse, but it was all three stooges, right? So they all got arrested. But anyway, so my dad together, because again, my dad already felt, because of the situation, that because they were threatening to prosecute as adults and blah 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 blah, just that she was scared enough,
Mhm.
and that the system was going to be punishment enough. But
Mhm.
see, my dad was the abuser, but my mom was the discipliner of me and Lisa. She was, if we came home late from playing, she was the one instigating the grounding, right?
Mhm.
My mom was never physically disciplined us. I mean, my dad, when he would have his rants, but if we were going to get in trouble and get grounded for something, my mom was the one doing that. And so my dad was getting mad that my mom was getting mad. And so this raises all the alarm bells and red flags. And so now I know that there's a problem, but I also know that Lisa's got grandma's car and she should be coming home right from practice. And my ride is late. And so I'm thinking, okay, surely at least she'll be here. Well, next thing you know, I hear the garage door open. My mom's coming home. She shouldn't have been home. My ride is late. She's coming home. And so I'm like, oh, I need to create a distraction. So I run downstairs and I pretend that I have geometry. I need geometry help because my
Mhm.
mom was the one that helped me with my math homework. And so my dad's now sitting like 5 feet from us. We had a built-in desk in the kitchen, and we were sitting at the kitchen table. He's still in his bathrobe drinking Manhattans. And so then I'm not even paying attention to the questions I'm asking my mother about geometry. She's trying to answer the geometry questions, and I'm trying to assess the dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
So, all's calm on the Western Front, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And my ride arrives and honks the horn. I give my mom a kiss. I tell her I love her. I leave for basketball practice. I get to the gym, and there's my sister. She's still at the gym. She didn't go home. And I didn't find out really until right before I launched the book that the coach, my mom, after she hung up with me, called the coach and told her not to send my sister home after practice and to have her stay. But for 35 years, because my sister and I don't really talk about this because she's not in a place to. I didn't know that detail. I thought all along that she just chose to not come home because she didn't want to get in trouble.
Right.
But so I left, and so Lisa was at the gym, and not too long after that, the neighbors came to pick us up because there was a fire. And so as we're leaving the school with our neighbors, that stupid song, the roof is on fire, from the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So that's playing on the radio. Lisa's singing it. We're in the back seat because they're telling us, oh yeah, they got the fire out. What is it? A kitchen? I mean, you're a teenager. You don't know. You don't know anything. The fire department's there. They've got the fire out. Your dad's at our house, blah, blah, blah. This song is playing. Lisa's singing the song. I asked the question, well, okay, well, where's my mom? And Mrs. Zidell looks in the thing and she says, oh, she wasn't home from work yet. So I hit Lisa in the leg and I look at her. I say, shut up. Mom was home when I left. In that moment, both of us 100% knew that mom was dead and dad did it, because from the time I was 6 years old is the earliest memory, and it probably was happening before this. My dad was threatening to kill us all and burn the house down. So it wasn't like that was an unthought of thing. So
Shelley?
Lisa and I both knew in that moment, but I can't speak for her, but what I did for the next 2.5 years when I had to live with him is I wanted to believe his BS story that he went shopping and that my mom had a heart attack and dropped a cigarette and the couch caught on fire and then the newspapers, blah, blah, blah. I wanted to believe that story, even though I knew it was, yeah. So as long as I can remember, like I said, the earliest memory that I had, I was 6 years old. And I recant this story in the book, that we had to flee the house and my dad was threatening to kill us and burn the house down. So I knew that that's what happened in that moment. I knew that, but instantly you go into this phase of you don't want to believe that because again, in domestic violence, it's not black and white.
Mm-hmm.
No one person is 100% evil because there's parts of my father. I mean, I'm an engineer. I could build a house from the foundations up, and I basically have. But I knew how to wire an outlet at 6 years old. I'm a carpenter. I can build things. victim of all these other things.
Right.
And so the police are asking questions, and I'm answering every question that they ask me, but I'm not giving them any information, and they asked all the wrong questions.
Mm-hmm.
They asked about data about the day before. Well, sure, I told them everything I just told you.
Mm-hmm.
And besides the threats and all that, I never told a living soul about any of those
Right.
before. And so they asked all these questions, and, we left. But they already knew you had a dead 50-year-old woman and arson. Now, a circus monkey's going to put something together that there's something suspect about that.
Right.
And so then they start getting reports from my grandmother and my aunt and some of my mom's friends. I know that there's a history.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know how many times the police re-interviewed me and my sister?
Zero.
Zero.
Mm-hmm.
Zero. So now I finally removed my so I'm a sophomore.
Mm-hmm.
And his trial was not, and this was the fall of it was October of my sophomore year. His trial wasn't until February of my senior year. He
Wow.
wasn't even arrested until February of my sophomore year. We came home. Here's the other thing. So no one says jack diddly to either one of us. They don't even re-interview us once they're figuring this out, that they hadn't pressed charges on him.
Mhm.
And we're living with him, and all this other crap is happening. He's
Being horrible.
it's just yeah. And so come February, Lisa and I come home from school. My dad at this point was drunk continuously and not leaving the house,
Mhm.
and on a medical leave from work. And so we get home, and he's not there, and we're like, there's a dumped plate of spaghetti in the sink, and his car's in the garage, and we're like, what? But again, it's a Friday night. We're teenagers. We're there's a party to go to. There's a boys basketball game.
Mm-hmm.
No one told, no note, no nothing, no information. So we did what we normally would do, just assuming maybe we're making up. Well, maybe his friends came and picked him up. And so we get home at midnight, because that was our curfew. The answer machine's blinking and the phone's ringing. So Lisa's answering the phone, and then we're listening to the answer machine. The answer machine's my dad, and the phone is my aunt, my dad's sister-in-law, his brother's wife, telling us that he had been arrested, and that me and Lisa, never mind that we're teenagers and no one came to stay with us that night. We have to go bail him out tomorrow morning from jail.
Oh, wow.
And post his bond, and he's just been arrested for the murder and whatever.
Of our mother.
Yes. And we're living in the house that we can see our house.
Yeah.
At this point. And I've been doing my own investigation in the house after I got over the horror of having to go there.
Right.
And so what? So they come in the next morning. It's an ice storm. It was terrible. And there's this whole cluster about money and our access to the money. Because at that point, my sister and I both had 40 grand in our college funds that my grandparents on my mom's side had mostly given to us. But we didn't have access to it without my mom's signature. So we end up changing that after that because of that. My dad ends up stealing that money. His lawyer ends up stealing. When my dad went to prison, there was 4 houses and 6 cars, and there was 0 debt. And hundreds of thousands of dollars got stolen from orphans. But that's a whole nother part of the story. So you would think that after the police started getting reports of domestic violence, they would come back and ask us anything. No. So
or
now,
protect you, because that was the part that got me when you said that you had went to testify at his trial and you came home to him that day.
well,
That blows my mind.
well, that's it. Well, here's the even worse part of it is, so now now we're living with him. He's now been arrested. He's out on bond. It's not another 2 years, another 2 years before his trial. I'm having to save my sister because now he's trying to smash her head on the countertop, and so finally, we're being robbed, we're being threatened. I mean, it's whatever. And so Lisa finally, she starts basically living at her friend's house, and I was trying to live at my friends' houses, but we lived with my dad, and then it's like, oh, I'm going to spend the night like 3 nights a week at friends' houses, and then it evolved. And so my one friend that I was spending the night at the most, they moved back to California, and they invited me to move there my senior year. And I'm thinking, well, I'm reading about my life in the newspaper. I'm reading about how I'm going to put flowers on my mother's grave, wondering why there's no grass. Oh, I'll read the next day that or the next week or whatever, her body's been exhumed. You know, I, I'm living out reading my life in the newspaper. CPS, zero contact. So then I'm living in California and my dad's trial starts. No one's ever talked to me about or even insinuated that I'd have to testify. My dad calls me on a Tuesday and says, "Shelley, you need to come home. You need to appear in court on Monday." Okay. He's like, "I got you a plane ticket. You're flying out on Friday. I'll pick you up at the airport."
So you were testifying for the defense?
I had no idea who I was testifying for. So I flew home
From California.
from California on Friday. My dad picks me up at the airport. The next day, again, there's no, Google. He gives me an address and he says, you need to go meet with this attorney to get prepped for court on Monday. I drive over by myself to this attorney. I've never met this. I don't even know this person. So I start talking to her. Now, mind you, I'm living in my own denial now for 2 years because I'm wanting to believe my dad's BS. I want to believe that he left and went shopping for heating supplies and came back and the house was on fire. That's what I want to believe, even though I know that's not true.
Exactly.
So now I'm sitting in this lawyer's office, and she shows me, one of the first things she shows me is this picture of this, you can't see my arms, but probably 3 feet in diameter or close thereof, of an irregular shaped, clearly bloodstain in the middle of the living room. Now, mind you, I was in that room right before I left.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, this is so she says, well, this picture was taken the night of the fire. Was the stain there in the carpet before you left? I'm like, no. She's like, well, would you have seen it? I'm like, yes, I was. And I show her, I was sitting looking out this window. I had to walk right through there to get over here. You come down the circular staircase, you're overlooking this entire room, which is giant. It's like a 20 by 25-foot room. Okay, this is the carpet. It's not a rug. And it's a huge stain that's clearly blood. They take this picture. She's like, well, yeah, when we went back to get a sample to send to the crime lab of what this stain was, the carpet There's only 4 people on the planet that I thought knew these stories. Me, my sister, and my dad. Well, my sister's not talking. I said nothing, and surely my dad's not incriminating himself. So at some point, my mom had told somebody these stories, and they're telling, and I'm learning about it. And then I look down and I'm like, I'm at the prosecutor's office. She's going to use me to prove premeditation because that's what she's prepping me to do. She's going to ask me these questions on the stand. I've never even admitted that these happened. I never even talked to my sister about it. And now you're putting me on the stand in a day and a half, and I have to sit and recant all this in front of my father and then go home with him.
Wow.
And I'm not even sure I want him to go to jail at this point. I mean, I do and I don't. And I'm like,
yeah.
And so, yeah, the whole testifying thing was another trauma and horror show.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm just thanks for answering my question, but and sorry to make you relive all
oh
this.
no, it's all good. I know I got very dynamic, but I know that you know, because of your background and because of what you've been through, that what I'm saying is so freaking ridiculous.
Yes.
Oh my mind, and I was like, I need to understand this because, oh my God. I mean, and because like I said, I know we have people that work in law enforcement and they need to hear what the victims go through. How you going to leave minors in the care of somebody who you suspect just killed their mother?
Arson and murder.
So, once they heard,
and they knew that he was threatening all of us since the time I was 6 years old.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying.
And here's one other thing you can tell your law enforcement people that this really pissed me off. And I didn't know this until I started writing the book. So my time on the stand was a horror show for me. I was scared out of my mind. And the judge kept yelling at me. So they excused the jury before they started launching into these questions about premeditation, because I was having a hard time with even the basic things. And because I was scared shitless.
Horrified.
And mortified and humiliated and
yes.
and so and totally conflicted. And so they excuse the jury, and then I give all this testimony where I literally knew I was risking my life to give this testimony. And so, well, what's your earliest memory of him threatening to kill you and burn down the house? Well, I know I was 6 years old. It was the summer of 1976 because we had this new Mustang. It was a this, and this. And on this occasion, we were fleeing the house. I was wearing these pajamas, blah, 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 blah. We were gone for this many hours. My sister had to climb in through the window to unlock the door so we could get back in, blah, blah, blah. I tell the whole story. And I do that for multiple instances that they were using, all while knowing that every word I utter, I'm putting myself at risk.
Yes.
And then they take a recess to bring the jury back in. So the jury heard none of that. Okay. It was going to be in the transcript, right? That was the intent. I go downstairs to the cafeteria to get a drink. I turn around and here comes my father, and I'm like, oh. And he does the one graceful thing he's ever done is he hugs me and says, just say what you have to say. I'm like, what?
That's got the hair standing up on my arms right now.
Well, guess what? I know why I was ready for him to kill me. And this is his response. And I'm still not sure he's not going to kill me when I get home.
Right.
But what I found out when I went back to the courthouse when I was writing the book to get my transcript is right when they called the recess to call the jury back in, the defense attorney called a sidebar with the judge and had every single instance that I testified about, that I risked my life to testify of thrown out because I couldn't say it was July 27th, 1976. I didn't know the right date. I was 6 years old. I'm 17 now.
Yeah.
I couldn't say it was Christmas Day. I couldn't
Yeah.
say, oh, if I would have said it was the 4th of July, but because it was some nebulous, there's hundreds of experiences. Do you remember what you did last week? Can you tell me the last time you ate KFC? What was the date? No. And you're a child. You don't run your life by dates as a 6-year-old.
Right.
I knew it was I gave you all these details, but yeah, the judge threw it all out.
You did not just experience domestic violence in your home. You experienced your dad killing your mom. You experienced having to answer questions from detectives. No empathy. Just, give me information. And then you're living with your dad and you got to get up on the stand and testify to what he threatened to do. So you experience child abuse from every angle, every direction.
Even from
Where
the
was
legal
the
system?
Where's the social worker?
Mhm.
Who was there to protect you? Who was there to
The
protect your
victim
sister?
advocates.
None. And you know it's a crime and it's still happening, is it should not take 2+ years for a murder to come to trial, because every single survivor of that, and I'm in lots of murder trauma groups, and
Mhm.
you cannot even begin the healing
Mhm.
of overcoming murder until the trial's over. And so those families are in limbo.
Mhm.
You can't even start. And then the whole trial process is re-traumatizing.
Mhm.
It adds to their trauma.
Mhm.
So the system is one big failure. The perpetrator has more rights than the victims.
Yes.
And that's a disgusting failure. But I digress.
If I did not believe before today that God is real, there is no doubt.
Oh yeah.
Because we're looking at you.
Smiling.
You definitely do not look like what you went through.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Beautiful smile, intelligent, educated. See, domestic violence does not discriminate.
Mm-hmm.
No, it does not. No, it does not.
It
The
does
last
not
video,
discriminate. No.
it does
Color,
not.
money, it doesn't
No,
matter what you
no,
have, what you don't have.
Mm-hmm.
no, it doesn't. It does not. It does not discriminate for any socioeconomic, any culture, any faith, anything.
No.
The devil's plan is to destroy all. So it doesn't, and it starts with destroying the family.
Yes. Yes.
And so the degradation of society is because of this destruction of the family,
Mm-hmm.
which is the destruction of morality and etc., etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
But that's his plan. God wins, so it doesn't really matter in the end.
Yeah.
And that's the positive thing, right? I said this before. Adversity is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for growth.
Mm-hmm.
We're spiritual beings having a mortal existence.
Mm-hmm.
And so in to go a little science on you is E equals MC squared, which is what everyone knows, Albert Einstein. So everything is energy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And another law of physics is matter cannot be created or destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
So what the devil does is he inflicts with negative energy on you. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but what is that? It's a gift. It's a gift because then you can take the power of the atonement and convert that negative energy into something positive.
Yes.
But if you didn't have that negative to begin with, you'd have nothing to convert because
Yes.
matter cannot be created or destroyed. And energy. So when that's step number one, possible. Step number two, and this one's a lot harder to believe, is that you're worth it. If you grow up with abuse, child abuse, domestic violence, which is child abuse, any other kind of thing like that, which unfortunately is the vast majority of us. There's more people afflicted than you even recognize.
No, yeah, you're looking at two right here.
You're looking at three, and I would say that the numbers are far more staggering than you think.
Yeah.
And abuse comes in all sorts of forms.
Yes, it does.
And so second is believing that. So first is believing it's possible. So hope. Yes. Second is believing you deserve it.
Yes.
And then third, and the most important step is trusting 100% in God's plan. Knowing what the plan is and knowing that you are not going to have all the answers. And part of the learning process, how do you teach patience? How do you teach patience? You have to wait. Patience is a characteristic that we have to learn. You have to wait. So I mean, I've already rambled about so many things, but I had to wait to find. The only thing I ever wanted after all my family was blown up was to have a family of my own. I didn't meet my husband till I was 40. I went over a decade without a date. And then, so I thinking, great, I'm healed. I've gone through my big trauma healing, which was like in my from 35 to 37. Now I meet my husband. I met another guy that I was told that he wasn't the one, which that was hard to walk away from. And then I turn around and I meet my husband, and I'm thinking, great, I'm going to ride off into the sunset. Boom, I get sick on my honeymoon. I'm bedridden for 7 years. I have to medically retire from my job. I have to lose everything again. And then after 7 years of being in constant pain and having constant nausea, losing, almost dying multiple times, I literally have no stomach. I spent my first Christmas of my marriage in the hospital having my stomach removed after 2 previous surgeries and nearly dying and a wound. I mean, just a nightmare. And so I'm like missing half my internal organs. And I, about 2 years into being constantly nauseous and in pain and being bedridden after eating anything I ate, I came to terms with, okay, well, this is just another thing. You would thought I learned patience by now, and long suffering. You would think that I would have learned that by now. And so, I mean, literally, it was just at my honeymoon. So when I first got sick. And so after I exhausted all my options, the Mayo Clinic turned me down, blah, blah, blah. I came to terms with, okay, Heavenly Father, it's whatever I'm supposed to learn, teach me. I'm okay. If this is what it is for me, till I draw my last breath, then that's fine. I'm okay because I trust you. And I did what I could do. And then another miracle happens. And my mom, I'm praying, and she comes to me again. Says, Shelley, it's time to get a blessing of healing. You need to do this, 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 and this. I'm like, okay. I've had multiple blessings because in my faith, the priesthood lay their hands on your head to give you a blessing of sick and that kind of thing. I've had I had many blessings already, and so I'm like, okay, I'll do what you're telling me I need to do, which some of it was outrageous because I ended up having to fly across because I needed to pray about who was supposed to help Glenn give me this blessing. When the person that kept coming to me, that the Holy Ghost was witnessing to me, was the person had moved across the country. and so and and so we decided to fast before I got this blessing. Well, I always got more sick when I broke my fast. And so now I had flown across the country. I was doing, by this point, I'm doing medical marijuana to contain the nausea, just to contain the nausea.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do that before I eat. I break my fast. I'm so sick. We're waiting for the time to go to my friend's house. And because we'd just flown across the country and I'd been fasting for 24 hours and I'm so sick, I can't get up from this table. It's like 2 hours. And Glenn's like, Shelley, I know that you think that this miracle is going to happen. And he's like, I have no idea what I'm even going to say. I said, I don't care what you're going to say. You're not going to say anything. God's going to say whatever he's going to say. And it's going to be whatever he needs it to be. And so I managed to get myself to the car and we drive over to my friend. And it's pushing out. Pain and nausea gone. And so I always tell people I'm the fattest malnourished person you'll find because I don't I don't process anything, that I don't take in the nutrients in my food. But so I still have fatigue and and that kind of thing. And but yeah, it was a miracle.
Are you and your husband still married?
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been married?
Since 2011.
2011. That was your only husband?
Mm-hmm.
Then
Yep.
God sent you who you needed
Yep.
to help you through this deliverance journey?
Yep.
And for you to write a book and share it with others.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other projects in the future that you have?
Well, no, I mean, I like, one of the things that I really I enjoy doing is people who read my book, if they have a book club, I will come to the book club and do a Zoom meeting so that when people read all these outrageous things, they can ask me the questions. They can, I really enjoy doing them because it gives me the ability to field the questions that people need answered.
Yeah.
And so I do those. I do book signing events and podcasts, and I'm trying to figure out ways to get more involved with the domestic violence community in the community, specifically around kids, because it's bad enough being the partner,
Right.
but the child has no voice.
No.
The child has they're learning everything the wrong way. and they have no voice. And so that's why you either see not 100% of the time, but a vast majority of the time, you're either going to get future victims or future perpetrators.
Yes.
And then there's a small number that become neither. Yeah, I'm that small number. But that's the pattern.
Right.
And so I'm trying to figure that out. But other than that's kind of where I'm at.
One question.
Mm-hmm.
Is your husband the opposite of your dad?
Very much so. Well, yeah, yes and no. I mean, as far as kindness, absolutely. As far as but when my dad wasn't drinking, he wasn't mean.
Right.
And but Glenn is very smart. My dad was smart. Glenn's funny. But so there's some things that are similar, but my dad's a narcissist, and he was an alcoholic narcissist, and Glenn's the opposite of that.
Yeah.
He's a saint, and thoughtful, kind, and loving. So I tell him he's a unicorn.
Yeah,
he doesn't believe me. But...
Yeah, definitely. Because when I was growing up, I heard that a girl marries her dad. She either marries the way he is, or she marries the way she needs him to be. Now, you and I, well, with our dads, we needed a different person than we grew up with. Both of our dads were the abusers. My husband, 40 years. He was totally different from my dad.
Yeah.
Now, he may have grown into an old special person. That's good, right? That's a good adjective. An older, special person. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I do. That's why I'm laughing.
I still take him over that life every day, any day. And I know you feel the same way about Glenn, your husband. Okay? And I'm saying that God blessed me with a totally different person than my dad, because I swore I would never marry a man like my dad.
Well, yeah, I was never going to settle. I would no.
Exactly.
Not going to do that. No,
Couldn't
no.
do it. And I swore that my children were not going to be afraid in their homes like I was afraid of. So everything that I was, I swore that my children and my husband, and thank God, he was in control and not me, because at the end I thought I was in control. But God controlled our lives. You don't look like what you've been through. Nowhere near it. You don't even look like you don't have a stomach. You look, I'm serious. From here up, you look very healthy, but that's God. Now, my grandma said, that's the kind of God I serve. That's the kind of God I serve, that you don't look like what you've been through.
Right.
You don't look like the hell that you had to crawl out of or run away from.
But the other thing is, and this is my belief, when somebody has been through the kind of things that you've been through, is because you have a calling in your life. Very big one. And the enemy's been after you from the go.
Yeah.
To try to stop you.
Yeah.
You're very smart.
Yeah. That's why I hang out with her. She knows a few. That makes me look smart too. But that is true.
That is true.
That is so true.
Mm-hmm.
God's got
It
a
is.
story in you for you to share with others
Mhm.
who are in it,
Mhm.
been in it, don't know how to get out of it, how to come through. See, faith is a big word.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't like the word faith
Mhm.
because it's like you're not in control of faith. You're not in control of faith.
Yeah.
You have to believe that it's going to work out for your good no
Mhm.
matter how it looks right now.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Trust
faith
the
is
plan. Trust the plan.
yeah, you got to trust the plan, and faith is like flying blind.
It is
Mhm.
flying blind.
Exactly.
But here's the analogy that I like is it's like imagine yourself you're standing on the Grand Canyon and and God says, I want you to you need to go across this other side. And you say, okay, but you have to cross the canyon.
Yeah.
And um in order to get across there, you have to take a step. And I'm telling you that there's a stone. You can't see it, but there's a stone.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to take the step. Are you going to take the step? Well, I don't know. Am I going to take the step? So you take that step and like, oh, I didn't fall. But I still got a long way to go to get to the other side.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
then you have to take it out. You have to try now you got one foot on the ground on the edge. You got another foot on this first step that you took.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're being asked to take the next step. Well, now you don't even have the earth that you're on. You're on this rock that you never could see until you put your step on it. You stepped on it, and now it's lit up. Like kind of like Michael Jackson in that video with the doot 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 doot.
Yeah.
It lights up.
Yeah.
And so you take the next step, and you didn't see that stone either, and now it's there, and now you're standing in the middle. Now you do that a few times, and then all of a sudden, all these rocks that you didn't even think were there, you see an entire path.
Yes.
And at first you didn't see anything. You saw nothing. But you have to exercise your faith in order to build your faith.
Yes.
And you have to be consistent about it. And consistently exercise your faith in those things. And then it doesn't mean you're going to get you don't have to arrive at the other side to know that that there's a path to get there.
Exactly.
And you don't have to start the journey on the path to know that the path even is that you can even see the path. And so if you have enough faith to keep making those steps until the whole path is shown to you, then your faith gets converted to knowledge. But you still have to exercise the faith in that knowledge as you continue the journey. And so it becomes easier to exercise your faith because now you see a lot clearer.
Yeah.
And the blinders are off, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah.
And so so when you get to that point, it doesn't mean the journey's over, and it doesn't mean you don't have multiple more hills to climb. That's why I tell the story about, I'm thinking I'm riding off into the sunset. Bam. I mean, one would have thought, I don't even talk about spending 2 months of my senior year in high school in a body cast for my back. I don't talk about the 5 knee surgeries and having to have a total knee replacement at 35 or 34 and getting run into the hospital and losing my mobility. I don't even talk about those things in the book. There's too many things.
Yeah.
There's more things that I could talk about that are just mind-blowing that happened.
Yes.
But and so here I am thinking I got the knight in shining armor and I'm riding off into the sunset, and now I'm back to square one learning another lesson that's overwhelmingly difficult. But I had a different understanding, and I had a different perspective, and it didn't make it easy, it made it easier. So
and then God also put somebody in your life that
right.
truly loves you, if you find someone, it's like we all come with baggage. But if you find someone that's willing to help you unpack your baggage, that's when you could continue to go on. It's hard when they don't want to help you unpack your baggage.
Right.
That's why you got to be careful who you choose.
Well, and you also need to unpack your baggage before, if you want a relationship, if you truly want a relationship that you desire, it's more important to clear your baggage first, because you're going to attract who you are, like where you're resonating.
Right.
And that's a true principle. I mentioned earlier, we're spiritual beings, which by definition means we're electrical. We emanate a frequency.
Right.
Yes.
And you've all seen them rub the glass with the water in it, and it has a different note, and this one has a different note.
Yes.
Well, in my material science class, in engineering, in my material science class, you learn about, this plastic has one vibrational frequency, paper is another. Every single thing is energy. It's just that what frequency it's vibrating at on a cellular level.
Right.
And so with one thing that I've learned in this whole journey, and I didn't learn this until the last few years. I thought all these tree huggers were just tree huggers, but but really there's a lot of wisdom in understanding these holistic and kind of Eastern medicine approaches to healing, is that the lowest vibrational frequency emotion is not anger, it's shame. So what does sin cause? Shame. What does abuse cause? Shame. So if God's plan is for us to have joy, which is one of the highest vibrational frequency emotions, then Satan's plan is for you to have shame.
Yes.
So you're either going to create your own through sin, or it's going to be thrust upon you through abuse, or both. And so Heavenly Father never asks us to do anything that's not for our benefit.
Right.
So what I learned, there's a guy named Greg Braden that's like this scientist, spiritual dude on like Gia or something. So one of his, they've now measured that, the Buddhist monks, they meditate like this. So what they found in these studies is, if you slow your breathing down and you lightly touch your heart, and you slow down and you get into a place that you're safe, and you start breathing and then thinking about the things that, there's 5 things, but I always just use gratitude because it's the most closely linked to prayer. If you think about the things in your life that you're grateful for, so while you're breathing slower and you are thinking about the things that you're grateful for, then this is why your hand is on your heart, is to remind you to feel that gratitude. And so if the science has shown now that if you do this exercise consistently for just 3 minutes of doing that, is expressing gratitude in a That's why I'm telling my story, because I did that for day after day after day after year after year after year.
Mhm.
And give up on your expectation of being so brilliant that you think you know what your life should be, and what you think the timing of things should be that are best for you. We're so clueless about how everything really works.
Mhm.
And there's a reason why we're told to be like little children. We have to be teachable.
Yes.
And I've connected with people from all over the world, um from the book and doing my stuff on social media and trauma groups or whatnot. I interact with people from Australia. I mean, I just had a friend come in and visit me for 2 weeks from Tasmania.
Mm.
I have people in England, and I have people in Canada. I have a couple guys that I talk to regularly in Nigeria and Kenya and Uganda and Rwanda. And uh, you know, those guys, their their problems are different than ours.
Yeah.
They're physical.
Mhm.
They're starving to death.
Yes.
And they're struggling for work and shelter, and if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of laws, you need those things.
Mhm.
They're struggling there.
Yeah.
The basis.
Or struggling with pride.
Yes.
We're losing our faith because we think we're so smart that we obtained any of this stuff on our own.
Mm.
And we don't recognize the gifts that we were given to obtain those things. We don't recognize the gift that we were given to be born where we're born.
Right.
And so, the struggles are different, but ours are more invisible because
Right.
it's pride.
Yeah.
It's falling. We have too much idle time. We have too easy, in the
Yeah.
sense that we get ourselves in trouble
Yeah.
because of whatever.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the adversity is different.
It is.
I'm not wondering if I have clean water coming out of my tap.
Right.
I'm not wondering if I don't have power today or for the next 3 weeks because this infrastructure sucks so bad. I'm not wondering those things,
Yeah.
but I'm tempted with laziness. I'm tempted with greed and
Mhm.
pride and lusting after riches and fame and all this other, whatever. I mean, I don't want to be famous, but I might be infamous, but and I, but I'm just giving examples.
Yeah. Shelley, I just want to let you know that your story reminds us of all of us, that no matter how dark our circumstances may be, there is always hope and healing on the other side. And thank you for inspiring us and our listeners today. We really appreciate you. Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone for joining us on this episode of Thrive by the Rising Muse. If you found this conversation as powerful as we did, please share it with someone who needs to hear Shelley's story.
And remember, if you're experiencing a mental health crisis, please dial 988. If a loved one is experiencing a mental health crisis, please dial 911 or take them to the nearest emergency room.
If you think you're in a domestic violence relationship, you need to talk to someone or get some assistance, please dial 800-799-7233 or text 887-888. Make sure that you're safe when making this outreach.
And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring stories and discussions on faith, family, and mental health. Subscribe to our social media platforms. We are at the Rising Muse on all platforms. We'll be back soon with another episode, so stay tuned. And until next time, don't forget to thrive.
Have a blessed day.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.